I'm going to mute you all, as always. And bear in mind that I can't actually unmute you from this end for some reason. I don't know why that has changed or how that has changed. But so if at any point you want to ask questions, just unmute yourself. And at the end, I won't be able to unmute you, but feel free to do so at the end. Anyway, thanks for coming again, everybody. Nice and relaxed and just usual routine. I think you're all familiar with this. Just turning from the middle of your body. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And gradually let your attention settle into your body. And your thoughts just clearing a little. And think of three things. There's the ground beneath your feet, there's the pull of gravity through your body, and then there's you, your body. And what we want to do is to find a way to, if you like, harmonize those three things so that you're not falling over, you're not being pulled over, but you're being supported, and so on and so forth. So any details of posture and movement have to take into account those three factors all the time. And we start to just feel that spacious quality. As the tightness and the stiffness in your body eases, so we lose some of the sort of restriction on things like your breathing and circulation. Shoulders start to loosen, so your arms moving more freely. And that's a quality, both internal and external, that we want to maintain and cultivate through all of the movements. Easier said than done, so don't mistake the simplicity of what I'm talking about with something that's easy to do. It's not the same thing at all. But really, whatever level you are in Tai Chi, however long you've been practicing these arts, it all seems to come down to the same small number of factors that you're playing with and trying to work out how to make them work in different circumstances. So remember, with the basic posture, I want to be in line with the pull of gravity. Try not to lean back or hunch forwards, although you may well feel as though you're hunched forwards. Our tendency, as a generalization, is to stand like this. So when we go from this to this, it's like our brain is telling us we're going from this to this. Those of you who haven't heard me talk about it in this way before, an example I often give to people is if you go on a boat and it's a bit wavy and you're on the boat for an hour or something like that, then you come up and you go on to dry land and your legs are still doing that. It takes a little while for your legs to adjust to the fact that the ground isn't going up and down. So we quite quickly get accustomed to certain things going on, and then we have to kind of relearn in a way. So if you've been standing habitually like this or whatever for the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, then it's going to take a while before your brain actually adjusts to the genuine upright stance. And if this has been your normal posture, go from this to this will make you feel as though you're doing that. Your brain will be telling you you're hunched over. You're hunched over, but it isn't necessarily the case. So it takes a while, and sometimes it can be helpful to have somebody correct your posture, although that's not necessarily the best way of doing it, I think, always, because the person who knows best is going to be you. And that's why I try and draw your attention to ideas like, a certain amount of space in the body, your freedom of movement, and so on and so forth, so that we begin to build up a more intuitive aspect to what we're doing as well. So now just raising your arms a little. And let your hands drop down. So standing for a few moments. Standing is a very useful exercise always in Tai Chi. And there's a tradition of holding postures, and in particular posture, sometimes referred to as Zhangzhong, which is though you're holding a ball against your chest. And it's something that it's a useful exercise to build up. So it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to remember lots of awkward movements and so on and so forth. It could be as simple, and should be as simple to start off with at least, as going outside and simply standing. Can you find that sense of alignment in your garden or anywhere really, and get used to that sense of coming into your body, of centering and rooting and aligning these elements that are very much interbound with each other. There's a massive benefit for both mind and body in doing that. And if we can get a real sense for this posture and how it feels, kind of hardwire that into our system, and as we start to move, more likelihood that we're going to be able to maintain it. So let your hips drop back a little bit, and then push up and sink. So hips going down and back, and then push up. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and push up and sink. Use this exercise to focus on the rooting down. So that yielding to the pull of gravity, particularly in your hips being pulled backwards. Okay, if I show you from the side, we refer to it as sitting. And it is like you're sitting onto something, but of course there's nothing there. So it's the thigh muscles that will take the load for the most part. Just be careful as always of your knees. And then wild goose. Still with an emphasis on the rooting down, but just feeling a little bit more what's happening in the upper part of your body. I think with the wild goose, because the arms are going out, we can be a little bit more aware of that expansion and contraction working up to the torso, towards our shoulders.
really difficult to raise my right arm. Yeah. Strength. We fell on it and twisted it again. Okay.
And then change into parting the clouds. Notice how if you just keep going, eventually your hands come back to the starting point. The circle is the basic unit of movement in our arms. One of the questions commonly asked in learning Tai Chi is about the arms. People have questions about the arms because they're the most visible part. The simplest answer, and in a way the most accurate answer, but the one that can be most frustrating, is they go around in a circle. I know it's not always obvious. In fact, the arms should be seen as being the expression of everything else that happens in the body. So the fact that your body's going up and down means that your shoulders are going up and down. That pulls on your arms and your fingers, gives them a certain amount of energy, and they just naturally swing around in a circle.
I need to do camera
And then
next.
change it. So somebody seems to be on.
Hi, Mike, it's Kerry. I'm trying to say hello.
Oh, hello, Kerry.
Hi, sorry, I can't get my picture up.
Ah, right, not to worry.
I'll give up with that. Do you want me to mute it?
Yes, please. Yeah, so we can avoid too much in the way of background noise. Yeah. So a dragon plucks the stars from the sky. You can do this two ways, really, or at least you can move between two methods of doing this. To start off with, I would say, do it with this up and down movement in the hips, because then you have a very clear physical, mechanical connection. Your legs get longer, they push on your hips push on your shoulders, and so on and so forth. But as always, there's an internal and an external element to what we're doing. And as we progress, we want to become more aware of that internal aspect. So the physical connections, the physical movements will create sensations within your body. Effectively, what you're doing is you're yielding to the pull of gravity, and then your body's just quite naturally pushing back up against it. That springy quality in your body. And if you make this movement smaller, then logically gravity is still working through your body. You haven't collapsed, hopefully, so you've still got the upward movement. And see if you can still detect that very subtle movement within your body. It's like if you put the radio on and then turn the volume down, how low can you get the volume before you actually stop being able to hear what's going on? And when you lose touch with that feeling, just increase the amount of movement through your hips again and connect with it again. So that gradually, I'm not saying one way is better than another, but by reducing the external movement, we do tend to become more aware of the internal. That's true for all of the exercises. So one more time. And then pushing up. Just do the first and last stage of this to begin with, pushing out. So when you push up, just feeling the sort of lengthening through your back. Remember, hips are dropping down, but your arms are going up. So you've got this very gentle, I wouldn't even call it a stretch, but extensions through your spine. You want to feel as though somebody's just hung a weight from the base of your spine. This time, as you push out, I want you to add the turn from your hips and your waist. And finish with the sideways move. So we have 4 stages. 1, 2, try and make sure that you're turning in your hips and your waist and just feeling your shoulders and your arms following that movement. Don't twist your back up. Don't twist your knees up. 3, and 4. Again. Good. Now, let one arm rest, drawing the fingers of one hand back. So you're standing beneath an arch and just sliding your hands around the fingers, around the arch, fingers pointing out, and then winding down. I'll come a little bit closer, so just so you can see that movement in a bit more detail. There, see how it swings out. And again, we have that circular effect above the midline of your body and down. Notice just how your arm turns. I'm not trying to make my arm turn. It's just a natural function, but it's still worth noting that. And then what we want to try and do, if it's comfortable for you from this point, when you get to here, you turn just a little bit. I don't pull my arm across my body and down. That's quite strong in that lower part of your back. So be careful, try not to do something like this where you're kind of twisting over, and don't sacrifice those basic alignments in your body just for the sake of a bit more movement. And then the other side. So I'll stand a little bit closer. You won't see my other side, but it's not doing anything. So, yeah. And then add in the turn if it's comfortable. So it makes it quite a strong movement up through the side of your body. Not exactly a stretch, more kind of extension. and then rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Hips go back as your head and your shoulders and your hands go forwards. Careful with your back and your knees. And again, just letting your hips drop back. This is where it can be quite strong here in the legs. So be careful. As always, remember that I try and do these movements quite big, especially a movement like this, so you can see what's going on. Notice how my hips drop back here. One more round. And then just stand for a moment. It isn't necessarily the case, therefore, that bigger movements are better. I think we need to find a balance here. But they do say in Tai Chi, in arts like this, that as you develop in these movements, you move less. And I think it's because there's more of an emphasis on what's happening within the body. They're described as internal arts, these movements. And that can have various meanings, but in this context, it means that we want to be just aware of what is happening very subtly within the body. And sometimes the bigger movements, if we make dramatic gestures with our arms and our hands, it's like, as I sometimes say to people, it's like being in a pub with some friends and there's somebody at the bar speaking in a very loud voice and you can't hear what anybody's saying to you because there's this big voice booming out. So you want to sometimes quieten the movements down and try and build the movements up from inside. And in the end, that's possible with any of the exercises. There are sometimes specific exercises given for internal and external, but really it's a matter of the view of the exercise that you're taking. And if we can become aware of these smaller movements within the body, they're like the bricks that build a house. And so we build the movement up from the small movements, the small changes within the body. That's something that is an ongoing process in Tai Chi. It's not restricted to people of a certain type or however long you've been doing it. It's part of what I think of as the internalization of movements. Now, from this position here, still in the parallel stance, just moving from side to side a little bit. So, again, it's not always obvious, but again, from the side, you notice there's this little curve in my knees. I hesitate to say that my knees are bent because, again, one of the common things said in Tai Chi, I can't do Tai Chi, I have to bend my knees. What you're really trying to do is to allow the knees to soften to get that sense of sinking down. There'll be a slight curve, but it isn't necessarily the case that you have to bend them a great deal. What will happen is, I'll show you from this side, and I'll exaggerate, but there'll be a feeling, if not the actual visible reality, that as I move the weight across into this leg, it's absorbing the weight of my body. There may be a little bit of a physical drop, but it's also about those sensations within your body. So imagine what it would be like to do this on a trampoline or on a bouncy castle. Or even in water, the very act of moving in one direction creates the potential for the movement in the other direction. Once you get used to this, it ceases to be, right, now I've got to go in this leg, now I've got to go in that leg, but rather a process of observation. you'll feel the right time for the return in movement. It will reach a point where if you were to stay there any longer, it would be a dreadful strain, and we don't want that to happen. So you just allow the leg to extend, the sense of, not physically perhaps, but also energetically, if you like to think of it like that. And you let that movement come into your body, and you just carry it across and down into the other leg. So we become very aware of the changeover point, the point where sometimes you might say yin changes to yang, where the sinking down changes to the push. And we don't want to strain against that. You don't want to get here and force yourself into position or to stay. And then move across and turn just a little bit. So as I go into my left leg, I let my body turn to my left and then to my right. And you'll notice, see my hands are straight out from my shoulders, but they're still moving from side to side. What they're not doing is this. And to get a little bit more movement, I go across and I let this heel come off the ground. And you can see that allows my hip and my shoulder to come around. And there. So if I didn't lift my heel up and I wanted to go that far, I'd end up doing this. And I'd be sort of straining, you see my knees being pulled, and so on and so forth. So I come across, I turn, I let the heel come up. And here, I keep the upright stance. Turn your hands palm up. Just hold them in front of you. So, think about the building blocks, the bricks, the components of the movement. The turning, the transfer of your weight, the compression and expansion, all the way down through your legs. And if you get a spring and you push down on it, then the compression will be evenly distributed through the whole of the spring. So you could think about it almost like every cell in your leg is being very gently compressed and then expands. It depends, that's just an image, of course. Or you could think of the top of the leg and the shin and the calf and so on and so forth. And likewise, the expansion comes all the way through your leg. And in the same way, it builds up through your back, the sides of your body and your spine, sort of brick by brick, cell by cell. So no one part of the body is being overused, but the sum total is actually quite big movement. Just like, each individual brick in your house bears only a small proportion of the load, but the house itself is quite big. And then from here, as you go across, raise your hand and just let it extend out a little bit. Turn palm down and back. And again, imagine your arm growing out of your shoulder, hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. And see if you can just feel the line of the movement from the sole of the foot through the side of your body to your shoulder and out through your arms and into your fingers. Try not to overextend your arm. And yet at the same time, we want to be able to just get a sense of improving our range of movement. So again, we need to find a balance. I can go to here and it's quite comfortable. If I push too hard, I'm straining. And once again, the term I think is good to think about and to use when we're doing this kind of thing is that we cultivate these qualities. And just like a plant grows gradually over a period of time. So we gradually get that extension of the movement. And then I'm going to change to cow gazes at the moon. Turn in. I'm going to come to one side so you can actually see what my arms are doing. I'm looking between my hands. I come back down and move across. I swing across and onto the other side. And aim to look up towards the sort of top of the corner of the room in front of you, or the place in front of you to begin with. And that's quite a nice little smooth movement. Just be careful of your back and your shoulders. Now again, we're not going to try and stretch. When you stretch fully, then you actually create a disharmony in the body. I'm a big fan of stretching, by the way. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, just that we don't want to do it with this. But you might want to try, and this is, be careful of your back, to go a little bit further. Some people like to look almost behind them. So what you do is you sink down a little bit more, you turn, you relax, and you just allow the body a little bit more scope for movement. In other words, going back to that idea of the space that we create in the body through the posture, you actually increase the amount of space so that you can move into that space more, but you don't force anything. One more time on each side. This is cow gazes at the moon. And then your arms holding the ball and turn. And then go back in the other direction. One more time. And come back and stand. Shake. So we need to remember that in Tai Chi, one of the primary goals is to encourage this sense of internal movement, the flow of the energy, and anything that we do in terms of stretching, in terms of toning, conditioning certain muscles, should be in the interest of doing that. It's all significant, and it all has a part to play. But I remember a few years ago now, I was in a martial arts class and we were doing what they call locking, you know, when you twist people's arms around. It was all very friendly, it wasn't particularly. But I was working with this guy, he was a big guy and his arms were really thick. And he worked out a lot. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to put a lock on this guy. But he went on really quickly and he said, yeah. He said, the thing is, he'd done a lot of weight training and the muscles and the tendons in his wrist were so thick that there was very little space there. And so almost as soon as the lock went on, there was pain in the joint because he'd lost space to move in. So we have to find a balance, and you have to think about why you're doing something. And in Tai Chi, this idea of the space and the movement filling the space is a really useful way to think about it. In Chinese medicine, the foundation really is that we want the energy to flow. We want the energy to flow harmoniously, without interruption, without blocks, and so on and so forth. And that's when we enjoy good health and well-being. And there's all sorts of things we might want to do in that interest, but that is the interest. We're not concerned with, you know, being able to, I don't know, lift our leg up and touch the ceiling or something like that, unless it's something you really want to do. So, you know, stretching, toning, and that kind of thing are an important part of our overall practice, but not while we're doing these actual movements. Your body will be conditioned by the movements in any case. Changing the stance from the hip width stance parallel to the hip width stance with 1 foot forwards. Turn out what will be your back foot, put 1 foot forwards, and gently transferring the weight. It's always very difficult to describe a movement because it's like trying to describe a picture or a piece of music. You focus on one thing and it kind of excludes the others. But some ideas about this movement to play with. You could be thinking in terms of it being a gentle push from the leg. So you move across, you get to a point, you gently push down through the foot and you push yourself back. You could also think that, again, we've got that springiness, like being on the trampoline, so that as you go back, you don't actively push, but you feel the leg being compressed and expanding. A third thing, which is quite interesting, a little bit more difficult to get your head around, I think, it was for me when I first came across it, is the leg that you're moving into. If I'm in the back leg and my front leg is stiff, that's going to happen. I'm going to hit a barrier. So what I want to do is get a sense of this being empty and almost being pulled forwards, a bit like water when it goes down a plug hole. And so we've got two primary energies, movements going on here. One is, in one variation or another, that movement upwards, the expansion, however you're viewing it. And the other is the drawing down, the contraction. The upward expanding movement, Chinese call peng. And they say it's like getting a block of wood and you push it down into water, and as soon as you do, the water's pushing you up again. Liu, on the other hand, the downward movement, is a bit like, if you, trick I used to do as a kid, you fill a sink up with water, take the plug out, put your hand over the plug hole, and you feel this sort of suction downwards. You try and lift your hand up and there's a pull downwards. And those are the two primary energies that we work with in Tai Chi. Again, it's yielding to the downward pull of gravity and feeling the resilience of the body. Give us this basic cycle of movement that is there in all the exercises. And shake out. And then on the other side. So in terms of this particular exercise, that up and down movement, Yu and Peng, translate into a horizontal movement the transfer of your weight. And that decision, if you like, is made between what we think of as our mind and this center part of the body. And that's where an understanding of the exercises comes in useful. Sometimes it might be their function, or it might be the image associated with them, with some kind of idea about structure or whatever. They all become part of that shaping of the movement that is already there within your body. So let's start with pigeon spreads its wings. So remember that what's going to move your arms is that shaping of that energy, or if you prefer, the development of that movement through the bricks in your body, the small changes in your body. Not, and I would really emphasize this, not straining with your arms. So pigeon spreads its wings is there because in one way or another we felt the sinking down through the pull of gravity, we felt the push back, and we've taken it through the body into a particular shape. And the more familiar you are with the movements, the more effective that process becomes, obviously. Fisherman cast the net, again, I always emphasize this, very, very common error in fisherman cast the net is this, that the arms move out. The arms are taken out from the body, and it's the opposite. My arms don't swing past my hips until I've settled into the foot. And look at where my hands are. They're here, not here. As soon as I do this, that is happening. So in some cases, those of you who sometimes say, oh, you know, I can't balance, stop using your arms and you'll find that it will get better. I do this exercise in chair-based exercise as well, fisherman cast the net. I used to joke to people, don't fall out your chair. But one day I stopped joking about it because a lady did fall out of her chair. She was sitting in the chair. She made the classic error with fisherman cast the net, which is she did this first and her arms pulled her out of the chair. If you're going to do that with something as simple as fisherman cast the net, then that mistake would be repeated through other exercises. So we'll come to that in a moment, but first we'll sink your weight back, hands on your belly, and pigeon spreads its wings. So that wave-like movement that comes out of the leg pushes behind your elbows and pulls your hands apart. And then it recedes, drawing your hands in. Notice that my elbows stop going back here. They don't go behind my shoulder. So you get a nice open, expansive feeling in your chest and your ribs. We would describe the movement in our arms always as being quiet. There's a tremendous strength available to us when we practice in this way. We can use the image of moving through water as well, but just the use of the whole body in that way, use of body and mind in the way that I've been describing, is tremendously powerful. One more time. And then fisherman cast the net. One more. And pushing away. So there's a build-up of an internal strength that is different to how we would normally think of as strength. It hasn't got the same relationship with muscle tone and so on and so forth that we would normally expect strength to have, although that's an element, but there's other elements as well. And again, this relates to this internalized aspect of the art. That area where mind and body and energy integrate into one. And then Tai Chi loves its images of small people, both sexes, all sexes, thrown around people much bigger than them and apparently much stronger than them. Somebody very well known for that was called Chen Manching. This film of him throwing around these big guys who did judo and so on and so forth, other martial arts, and he was by no means a big man. And according to one story, he moved to New York from Taiwan, and he took up 10-pin bowling. And he really enjoyed the 10-pin bowling, but he stopped going. And one day somebody said to him, "How come you're not going bowling anymore?" And he just said, "Oh, the balls are too heavy." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" He was able to deal with these big guys, trying to push them around and so on and so forth. And yet his arms weren't strong enough to carry the weight of a bowling ball, he reckoned. So there's a very interesting element to this internalization, this internal view of the whole process, not only for pushing people around, but in terms of just your own sense of strength and well-being. So have your other foot forwards, hands on your belly, and pigeon spreads its wings. So we're concerned not purely with the flow of the energy, but also with the quality of the energy, the strength of it as well. One more time. And then fisherman cast the net. and pushing a wave. One more time. Bring your feet parallel. Go back to the first 3 exercises as a little sequence. Rooting down. Wild goose. And parting the clouds. Just feeling the subtle changes within your body as you make the transition from one movement to another. One more round. Bring your hands around, press together and rub your hands. And then just tapping over your face, and pads of your fingers. Come a bit closer so you can see. It's just a light sort of tapping, almost like rain falling on your face. And over your head now. I tend to use the palms of my hands. You could carry on using your fingers or you could fist your hands, it's up to you. Down to one shoulder. And you are. And then on the other side. Again, just so you can see clearly what I'm doing. And then go around onto your back, very light on your back. Just cover as much of your back as you're comfortable with. Around your hips. Legs. Belly. Only the upper part of the chest. So that last exercise, again, very simple, something you can use. You can do it in any order, by the way. I just do it in a particular order so I don't miss anything out. It's how I was originally taught. There's many benefits to it, both physical and mental, and it's quite a good thing to do if you're feeling a bit tired or first thing in the morning. And the kind of stimulating effect is to move the energy a little bit. Once the energy gets moving, then it regulates. You know, as I say, it doesn't really matter which way around, or different ideas about you do it this way, you do it that way, but they all seem to work. So it is a nice, simple little exercise, that one. I do it at the end of the class, really, because I think it helps to take some of the ache out of the muscles and things like that. But sometimes I would do an exercise like that at the beginning of a class. If it's particularly cold, for instance, and I want people to really warm up properly, it's a good way of doing that. But also in some circumstances, some people I teach them, they're a bit distracted or for one reason or another can't focus. This is a nice, simple way of actually beginning that focusing process. So as I said, I can't actually unmute you, but feel free to do so yourself if you have any questions before we finish. I don't know what Zoom have done with the unmute button. Can't seem to get any information about it. But we'll go to Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain. So let your hips drop back just a little, settling down, and then push up. Bring your hands around as though you're holding a cradle. Pull in and so you're sort of wrapping your arms around, cradling the ball, embracing the ball, drawing in, and just finding that sense of centering and settling again. One more time. And just stand. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths to finish. And just shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along.
Thank you very much.
Yourselves.
Thank you.